So
you can hear me.
we're back with Gabriella Rodriguez, former principal, secondary school, and we are getting insight into her experiences as a former administrator. So, Ms. Rodriguez, you can tell me, you're retired now. How has your transition to retirement been so far?
Well, I think I transitioned to retirement quite well. I taught for a brief stint with adult education group that did not last very long. And then I taught at a secondary school, and that lasted for 5 years.
Right.
I was glad to be back in teaching, and I enjoyed what I was doing. Especially, I enjoyed what I was doing because I enjoyed being of service, you know, helping the children to learn. And I had a Form 1 and a Form 2 and a Form 3 and a Form 4 and a Form 5. So I had experience of all of the levels. And I was reasonably satisfied or quite satisfied with the results that I got at the end for the CXC, as well as in both language and literature. So I felt very encouraged by those things. I would have liked to take the Form 6 through for the literature, but it was not offered to me.
Okay.
But I would have liked to have done that.
Okay, so are you involved in any educational projects or community activities post-retirement now? Are you still involved in any of those types of projects, community or educational?
Preparing to be involved. I've had a couple of health issues I've had to deal with, and I am now in discussion, particularly for outreach to adults who never got the opportunity to complete schooling. I'm interested in those people who are 30 and 35 and maybe 40 or more, who feel that they would like to go back and they would like to get something done. I've done that before. For example, the person who helped me at home had never done school leaving at all.
Okay.
And I said to her, do you want to do school? This years ago. And she said, yes. And I got her to go through school leaving, and she passed. And then there was another person who worked for me, and I said, do you want to do your O-levels? And she said, yes. And she not only passed, but she went on to get a government job.
Wow.
Having cleaned the floors for me and all that, she got a job with the government, and I was very happy about that. So my commitment to human development, it's really human development, that you love people and that you understand that people can get trapped at a certain stratum, and that unless you you regard your skills as a gift, that your skills are really a gift that you can use for other people. They piggyback on your skills, and they achieve what they want to achieve, that they realize some of their dreams, especially in a rural area. That is a very, very important thing.
So can you tell me what qualities you believe are essential for effective school leadership?
Effective school leadership requires that you are unafraid, because you face many issues, not only in managing your school and understanding clearly that the principal facilitates what the staff want to do. That is written into your job spec. You facilitate, you don't order them around. It isn't a master-servant kind of relationship at all. It's a relationship educationally as equals, and it just happens that you have more service than they do, so you are at a higher level on an administrative level, and that you are prepared to facilitate their development and facilitate their plans. I do not. It requires a lot of courage. It requires a high regard for confidentiality, and it requires a commitment to handle your problems within the school and not to be running up to seniors to report this one and report that one and report the other one. In my administrator thing, I only had one person that had a terrible record for punctuality and attendance. I had to deal with it. And I called and I explained. I said, look, according to regulations, I'm going to have to log you. And after a long time, I did it. And I said, this is what I will require of you, that you read the log and that you sign it. It's just a formality. And of course, no character statements, nothing like that, just that late for so many sessions and so on, and the person says this information is correct and signs it. That person, eventually I got her transferred to a school that she wanted to be at, right? So I think she would have functioned much better there too. Sometimes teachers who come from outside do not like the rural schools because the rural schools are very mild without all the excitement and everything of the urban schools. And so I was able to get her out. Could you repeat your question so I could get back to it?
Yeah, I was asking, what qualities do you think are essential for a school leadership?
Okay, so a school leader has got to know when to order. In all my years, I think about 5 years, I ordered once. And I said very clearly, this is an order. And it was very straightforward. The SEMP curriculum had to be taught in forms 1 to 3. And people kept doing their own thing, writing up their own lesson plans and all kinds of things. But SEMP gave a full description of what you needed to be doing. And I said it once, and I said it twice, and I said it a couple of years. And then I said to them, this is an administrative order. I want to see none of your lesson plans, not one. You are teaching the curriculum which was sent to us. And that is what happened, and our results began to go up because we were following the curriculum that we should have followed for a national benchmark. And I believe very strongly in supporting something like a national benchmark, but because it informs the ministry about where they should be pointing the bow. So I gave an administrative order, the only one that I gave in all of those years. I think that administrators should be very hesitant about giving orders. You're dealing with grown people, you're dealing with adults, but you have to know when to be very firm. And at the same time, being very confidential, because if you've got to order a member of staff, you have to be confidential also. That you do not go and say it, oh, you know, I had to order so and so and so, and I had to do this. And that is, in some senses, an administrator leads a lonely life because you have to carry the burden without looking for any sympathy at all and without looking for any companionship sometimes, right? You carry the burden without those things.
How did you manage working with the different personalities that you would have had on staff? I'm prompted to ask this question because you mentioned the teacher who, you know, if you have cases of irregularity and unpunctuality, people might consider a problematic teacher. So how did you deal with problematic teachers and as well as the differing personalities you had in staff?
Well, I have a very high value for courtesy. And I believe that no matter what is happening, that your courtesy has got to stay in place, that you've got to be respectful to people. And I was respectful to my staff, all of my staff, right? I was never disrespectful, for example, to my MTS staff or disrespectful to my safety staff, because we had safety staff in our school. Not disrespectful to the people who are teaching, right? For example, I could not enter a teacher's classroom unless I rapped. And I would not do surprise visits. If I had to visit, I would say, I am coming to visit you, right? And I try to avoid that. You don't want to pop up as if you're trying to find the teacher not doing what they're supposed to be doing. At the same time, a principal needs to know, so that you've got to be an observant principal, and I had a very high sense for safety too. So that I was very aware of having to protect the children at all times, but having to protect staff too.
Yeah.
I remember coming to school one day and finding that I looked across the inner courtyard, and there was a man at a classroom door, and I did not recognize who the man was. And I called my safety officer immediately and said, "Who is that man?" They said, "Oh, he's distributing some pamphlets." I said, "Not at all, get him off immediately." And I called my welding people right away, and we made a special wall, a wrought iron wall, that did not allow anybody to get past without a guard having let you in.
Okay.
Because the principal is supposed to be highly aware of safety. You have to protect lives, the lives of your staff, as well as all your staff, as well as your students.
Certainly. I feel you've touched on this just naturally in conversation, but can you give the listeners a kind of idea of the duties of a principal? You've touched on managing the ancillary staff and the teaching staff and the students. Any duties, again, fall under the principal's portfolio?
Well, one of the duties that a principal, I have heard that some principals don't do it regularly. That is the signing of the log. A log is kept on the daily activities of the school. A principal cannot leave the compound until he or she has accounted for the activities of that day. Things are to be logged in. Also, protection of keys. For example, I kept money in my vault. I had a vault. I knew where my keys were all the time. There was never an instance when those keys were just left lying. I had total control of those keys. I was very highly safety conscious. In fact, I had an instance in which we had bought all the equipment for the language lab from Canada. So we used the school fund, we bought it from Canada, we brought it in, and then we had to keep it safe. So I locked it into a room close to my my principal's office. I locked it in a room. I kept it there for more than a year. Every bit of it accounted for. Thieves broke into the school.
Wow.
They stole a little computer, a little thing. They never found that equipment at all. They never found it. I had it safe. I had it protected. And when the people came from Canada to install and check and everything was there down to the last screw. So I have always, maybe it comes out of my South American jungle kind of experience, that you're highly aware of safety all the time, because your life could be threatened by the rivers or by snakes or by whatever. So you're highly conscious of safety all the time. And I have always been a very safety conscious person.
Excellent. So what advice would you give to aspiring principals?
Not to panic, and not to be very careful of surrounding yourself with friends. The principal's job, to be properly done, can sometimes be a lonely job. That goes with the duty of principal. There are instances in which you can only consult your senior, and there are principals in which there are areas in which you have to keep a lot of confidences. There are things that you cannot share, and you should not share. Staff should feel confident to tell you whatever they want to tell you without feeling that you will broadcast it. That is horrible. Also, they need to tell you when they don't like what you are doing. I had an instance in which one brought a tutor representative and came with the tutor representative with a letter that was written very critical of myself. And I sat down and I read it through. And then I chatted with him about it and so on. And I said at the end, well, we've chatted about this in the presence of your union officer. Do you want to give it to me? Because if you give it to me, I'm going to have to reply to you, and I will do so in writing. Do you want this? And that person said no. I said, okay, well, here is your letter. You can have it back. And he took it and left.
Mm.
Because once we had talked about it, my deciding to give it back to him circumvented a long investigation and all of that. And because I had patiently talked through it with him, he was able to see maybe that he didn't have to go that particular route, right? So I'm saying that a principal gives his staff every possible chance to maintain a good name.
Mm.
There are certain things you have to be ruthless about, especially in co-ed schools.
Mm.
You cannot, for example, turn a blind eye to flirtations among like young staff and students, especially girls, right? I had one instance in which I gave a warning to an OJT. I said, you know, I don't like how much time you're spending with the girls, and he did not mind what I said. And when I was aware he was doing it a second time, I put him to sit down and I called the people who sent him and I said, I want him removed today, immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent him out of the school immediately. I didn't give him a second chance, right? Because as a principal must act with decision. You must know and you must be able to recognize what is dangerous to the name of your school and to the name of the student, what's dangerous for a student. And you have to be decisive in what you're doing. And unafraid. I remember having to deal with having to send call trucks to take children home because the roads were flooded. And my senior thought I was calling to ask him what to do. I said, I am not doing that. I am calling you to tell you what I have done. Right? So that I took the decisions because I was on spot and it was a matter of safety. And you prioritize safety immediately. If a safety issue was brought to my attention, I got up from my desk immediately and I went. There was no hesitation at all. Safety, a principal has got to prioritize safety. And I'm talking that you've got to be observant. In this case, I was told that there was a shaking gate, an iron gate. Got to be immediately. I said, ban the children, keep them off. I'm sending for the people to repair the gate. By the next day, we had the gate fixed.
Is there any issue? I know sometimes principals, at least during your tenure, would have had, a principals meeting. Is there any issue that principals would have found pretty challenging or at the forefront of things that they would like to tackle?
If I throw my mind back, what was very challenging for principals, and I thought that the authorities gave ground in it when they should not have done that, is the writing up of the strategic plan for the school. A strategic plan is quite a far-ranging thing. And they eventually boiled it down to a developmental plan, which is like a baby version of the strategic plan. And I thought that they should have stuck to their guns with the strategic plan, because what it forced principals to do was to align themselves to the strategic plan of the ministry. So if you know what the ministry's strategic plan is, you know what you need to develop in your school, right? Because you're tied into the overall strategic plan. And I found that strategic plans needed to be done properly. I redid my strategic plan about 4 times. The first time was really bad. The second time a little better, third time a little. So I kept improving so that I was always, when I got training, I used my training. I didn't just say, oh, I have a certificate. I used it, I tested it, I made it work, right? And in fact, when I was preparing to leave, I spent a whole year in disengaging, because I not only did the strategic plan, I updated it, but I also did the school profile, which was pages and pages long, and I dealt with everything in the school. So I gave a written account of everything, right? So my shutting down and leaving, the day I got up from my desk and I walked out, I had fully accounted for development, for what needed to be done, and for all equipment. Everything was in place, except when we lost through stealing. There were a couple instances in which we lost through stealing. In fact, one member of staff, technical staff, lost his job because of that, because he took something he should not have taken,
Okay.
right? And a principal must be showing the staff that you can depend on your principal, that there is no matter that your principal will not tackle or will not, and your principal will not throw you to the lions at any time at all. Even when you are not functioning the way that you should function, there should be some word of defense from your principal. You must be able to trust your principal. You mightn't like your principal. There was a senior who I wasn't sure liked me at all, right? And I had known that person for many, many years, but I trusted his knowledge. He was knowledgeable. And for that reason, I could respect him. He was knowledgeable. If he advised you about regulations, about anything, he was right on spot, right? So that I tried to maintain good relationships with my seniors too. I was always very outspoken, but I regarded their expertise.
So how do you think you've impacted students and staff that you've worked with?
I hope that the students learned service and that the staff learned service. I try to keep them comfortable. I try to show them that the staff does not have to be an uncomfortable place. A staff doesn't have to be uncomfortable. And I think that some of them would have benefited because I supported plans. I supported plans that they had. I encouraged them to do things, The projects we did, I got staff participation for that. So they saw themselves achieving certain things. The students would have been happy because, well, they played mass. They went out and played mass. And yes, they were able to cheer the national football team on. I encouraged field trips, and I was very lucky. Abby Blackman, Ras Shorty Eye's daughter, walked in my school one day and said, I need you to, as soon as I heard she was in, I left the meeting and came and greeted her. And her children, pardon me, I accepted her children into the school. And I said, I cannot lose Abby at all. And I got Abby employed for culture in the school. I did not have a music teacher at that time, and I did not have a drama teacher at that time. And Abby was very willing. And Abby trained the children. She toured with them. She took them down to San Fernando and competed. She did well, and she was properly paid. I made sure that she got a salary from the Ministry of Education for what she was doing. And I put up representations for that. So what I'm saying is that if you know properly what you want to do, you can convince people higher up. But you must be certain about what you want to do for your school and why you want to do it. I could not let the gift of Abby be lost.
So is there any message you would want to leave with educators out there? Any words of advice for just people still here toiling and teaching?
No, we are a multicultural country, I would really like to see in government schools, I could speak for my school that I would have liked to have done more for Indian culture in my school. There was some dancing but I did not get around. If I had stayed longer, I would have done it to outfit them with their costumes. I would have liked to really, really outfit them. What I did buy for them was all of the drums. Because I bought drums. I got drums specially made. I got African drums made, djembe and all those drums. I got them made and brought into, so the children love them. And I brought in the Indian drums too. But of course, when your time comes to leave, you have to leave. And I would have liked to have done more culturally.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you could go back, and not everybody is like this, but if you could go back and give your younger teacher self a piece of advice at the start of your career, what would it be?
The teaching is really a vocation based upon love of people, a strong desire for developing the child, and a strong culture of hope based in your own culture, that you understand how to hope for yourself and hope for the future within your culture. Also, that you understand that education makes you break boundaries. And I'm saying that from experience, that I, as a child, I was born on an Amerindian reservation. I am not Amerindian myself, but I was born on an Amerindian reservation.
Mm-hmm.
My earliest was, if you put a paddle in my hand, I will take a boat anywhere. I will steer a boat and steer it safely and everything. But education took me far beyond that, far beyond that, so that I could look back and I can see the simplicity that I came from, but I understand that the complexity that education introduced into my life. And when you have that complexity, you can help to develop, to move people out of absolute simplicity, where they sometimes do not have dreams for themselves, that you could help them to develop dreams for themselves.
Mm.
People need to be able to dream for themselves.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Rodriguez, for taking the time out to join us here on Teachers Have Issues. Yes.
Thank you very much for asking me, and I wish best of luck to you. I wish your program prospers, and I wish that I have said a few things that will cause people to think, really cause people to think.
Certainly, certainly. And thank you to my listeners. Remember, you empower minds and you ignite curiosity.